Dropping $70 on a digital video game only to discover you just signed a 30-day rental agreement is a uniquely modern privilege. Staring at a locked game screen on a rainy Sunday because your local internet provider happens to be doing maintenance feels like getting evicted from a house you already paid off in full. Recent reports are, terrifying PlayStation owners around the globe currently. A sudden, completely unannounced system update is actively tying digital PS4 and PS5 games purchased after March 2026 to a mandatory 30-day online check-in clock. This panic originated out of nowhere on April 24, when the modding creator Modded Hardware posted a video running the 13.50 firmware. The developer Lance McDonald took that video and amplified the claims across social media, stating, quote, "Hugely terrible DRM has now been rolled out to all PS4 and PS5 digital games." McDonald warned the entire community that failing to connect your console to the internet for 30 days results in your purchase license being completely removed.
Sony's PlayStation 4 user interface now explicitly hard-codes a visual countdown directly into the game information menus. Modded Hardware demonstrated that titles purchased from March onward come saddled with an expiration date visually identical to a PlayStation Plus subscription timer. The operating system has fundamentally restructured how it presents ownership data to the end user.
They formatted it like a subscription timer, like even if you paid full retail price for the game, or just grabbed a free download.
The firmware update containing these architectural changes deployed quietly in March 2026. Players were entirely unaware of the underlying mechanics until the 30-day window began slamming shut for early buyers in late April.
People were hoping that initial video and the screenshot Lance McDonald shared was just a hoax. The preservation community Does I Play immediately acquired the firmware and replicated the issue on their own hardware. They posted their findings the very next day, April 25, proving beyond a doubt that all new PlayStation Network purchases possess a 30-day validation countdown.
The narrative shifted overnight from a single modder's unverified claim to a documented phenomenon happening across multiple systems globally. They noted they were digging into the code to find out more details.
The timing of this digital rights management panic borders on tragic comedy. The massive PlayStation Store Big Games, Big Deals promotion is currently live, discounting a huge swath of new titles. Players are rushing to buy these discounted games, completely oblivious to the fact that they are strapping a 30-day leash onto their digital libraries.
The mechanics of this leash affect the two console generations in drastically different ways. A Reddit user named Apandabu22 documented the precise user interface changes after purchasing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. The PlayStation 4 throws a literal, undeniable countdown timer directly on your screen.
The PlayStation 5 hides the timer entirely and simply hands you a brutal boot error the second those 30 days expire. You get a transparent warning on the older hardware, whereas the newer hardware acts like a silent trapdoor.
Hiding the countdown timer on the PlayStation 5 creates an actively hostile user experience. Players launch software they purchased with real currency and encounter a hard stop with zero prior notification from the system.
The PlayStation 4 approach at least provides the raw data necessary to understand why the operating system is rejecting the user.
It displays the valid period start date and the valid period end date. The console generates a specific numerical value, calculating the exact moment your access rights terminate.
The Activate as Primary Console feature actively breaks the fundamental logic of offline gaming here. Sony designed that primary console setting specifically to authenticate licenses offline. Setting your machine as the primary console was the established, documented method for playing your digital library without an active internet connection.
This new digital rights management update ignores that local certificate. It demands a server-side application programming interface call to overwrite the expiration date. A constant ping to an external server forcefully overrides any local permissions the user attempts to establish.
Buying a house with cash, taking the physical keys, moving your furniture inside, and then having the bank change the locks every single month until you call them to verify your identity is a dystopian nightmare. Sitting in a rural area with satellite internet and getting locked out of a single-player campaign because a severe storm knocked out your connection turns a mild inconvenience into visceral frustration.
The system forces the console to phone home, request a new cryptographic token, and apply a fresh 30-day stamp to the file registry.
The hardware checks the server, finds nothing, and instantly barricades you from the software.
Connecting the console to the internet successfully verifies the game license, resetting the internal timer for another 30 days. Users in regions lacking reliable internet infrastructure face a perpetual cycle of monitoring their console's expiration dates.
The games do not vanish from your hard drive, obviously. A dormant file taking up 80 gigabytes of storage space is functionally identical to a deleted file if the system refuses to launch it.
The files sit perfectly intact on the solid-state drive, completely inaccessible, until the network connection is restored and the server handshake completes.
The system effectively holds the software hostage pending network verification. The software interface changes are alarming enough on their own. The hardware vulnerabilities reveal the true physical depth of this system.
The entire countdown mechanic relies on the physical console tracking time offline. A playtester named DatumSate ran a doomsday experiment to destroy the hardware's internal clock and document the fallout.
They intentionally cracked open the console and drained the CMOS battery.
They purchased a digital copy of Super Meat Boy Forever with actual money. Draining the battery forces the system's internal logic to forget the current time entirely.
The game instantly became entirely unplayable offline, proving the hardware actively locks the software when it loses track of real time.
The CMOS battery powers the motherboard's real-time clock independently of the main power supply. That specific lithium coin cell component maintains the current date and time when the main power cord is disconnected from the wall.
It cannot verify if 30 days have passed or if 30 seconds have passed.
The console recognizes a state of temporal uncertainty. The operating system defaults to maximum security protocols. It overrides any remaining offline days and forces an immediate online handshake requirement to prevent localized time manipulation.
Buying a game with actual currency offers zero protection from this battery failure. The user DiscGameSeed explicitly noted they did not claim Super Meat Boy Forever with the PlayStation Plus subscription service. They bought a standard retail digital license.
The system treated a standard retail purchase like a temporary promotional rental the second the motherboard lost power. Relying on a small CR2032 watch battery for the permanence of a digital library introduces a physical point of failure into a digital ecosystem.
Batteries degrade chemically. They hold linked charge over time and eventually die.
Millions of digital purchases will evaporate the moment the CMOS battery dies, when the servers verifying these licenses inevitably shut down a decade from now.
The console becomes a plastic brick filled with encrypted, inaccessible files. Sony's alleged internal explanation shifts the conversation from intentional malice to staggering incompetence.
The preservation community does play cited an anonymous insider claiming this entire digital rights management panic is an unintentional bug. Sony allegedly broke something while fixing a system exploit.
They supposedly knew about the confusing user interface for a while, but did not view it as an urgent priority. The update posted on Kotaku at 1:53 p.m. Eastern Time on April 25 highlighted the massive traction this story gained.
The post from playtester DiscGame's site wrapped up thousands of likes and hundreds of replies almost instantly. The community is actively searching for answers while Sony remains silent.
Ascribing this to accidental code corruption ignores the specific formatting of the user interface. Software bugs generate random hexadecimal strings or cause hard crashes.
Deliberate coding produces clean, localized text fields reading valid period start and valid period end.
Commenters on Kotaku are pointing out massive inconsistencies in the rollout. A user named Zach Burnett noted his copies of Hades 2 and Pacific Drive, purchased in April, showed 0 valid period entries on his system.
He listed Promise, Mascot Agency, and 15 other digital games bought since the year began, all entirely unaffected by this 30-day clock. A random firmware bug does not selectively target specific titles, while ignoring others bought in the exact same window.
We have historical precedent for Sony making these expiration date errors. Another user, Scruffy, pointed out the 2022 PS3 PlayStation Classics expiration incident.
Thousands of players were locked out of older games because their licenses suddenly claimed to expire in 1969. The 2022 incident involved a U9X APOC time glitch.
Computers track time by counting the seconds since January 1, 1970.
The system defaulted the expiration date of classic titles to December 31, 1969, due to a 32-bit integer overflow error rooted in how operating systems allocate memory for dates.
The system ran out of memory to store the day string and reset to 0. The current situation involves functional countdowns extending 30 days into the future from the moment of purchase.
They claim this is a bug, but a fully functional, localized countdown timer,
actively reading the system clock to calculate future dates.
Generating explicit text fields cannot just magically compile itself out of a random memory leak. The user interface displays perfectly formatted data.
Creating a new visual element requires a developer to write the display logic, link it to the system clock, format the localization strings for multiple languages, and push it through quality assurance testing.
The code rendering those tags exists because an engineer typed it into the firmware build. Prioritizing a system exploit patch over user experience aligns precisely with corporate security protocols.
The insider claiming they knew about the confusing user interface implies somebody saw the countdown timer in testing and simply decided to leave it in the live firmware.
Pushing an update that breaks offline verification to close a piracy loophole is a standard industry practice. The anonymous source claims Sony broke something accidentally, but the implementation suggests a temporary security measure left active in the retail environment to plug a vulnerability.
A commenter named Alex noted that most users are reporting the timer disappears from their interface within a week or so, and no one has been permanently locked out yet. Other commenters blame bad programming habits.
A user going by death penalty for Bishop Jonathan Ross called out the lack of a proper offline mode, urging support for the Stop Killing Games movement to get rid of annoying kill switches entirely.
The visceral reaction to this news stretches far beyond PlayStation's immediate public relations crisis. The fear of an always online future is deeply embedded in the gaming community.
Users on Reddit and social media instantly compared this 30-day check-in to Microsoft's disastrous Xbox One reveal back in 2013. Microsoft demanded a 24-hour check-in.
Microsoft attempted to force an always-online requirement for all games. The community backlash was so intense they had to scrap the entire system before the console even shipped.
Failing to connect within that window restricted the console to live TV and Blu-ray playback, blocking all gaming functions. Sony capitalized on that misstep in 2013 by explicitly marketing the PlayStation 4 as an offline-friendly console.
Seeing reports of Sony implementing a 30-day variation of the exact same policy a decade later highlights a massive shift in corporate strategy.
The infrastructure required to manage these check-ins requires dedicated server farms and continuous monitoring. The march toward all-digital distribution inherently strips away traditional ownership rights.
The cynicism in the user comments is suffocating. One user named BL4Skrock literally quoted the phrase, "You will own nothing and be happy."
Reddit users are demanding government regulation against kill switches, stating that politicians need to step in because the industry will not police itself.
Buying a digital product feels increasingly like paying for temporary access to a server that someone else controls. One user vented, "This should be illegal."
Another called it a result of Sony getting complacent and anti-consumer due to weak competition from Xbox. Walking into a retail store and handing over $5 for a physical Xbox 360 copy of Saints Row 3/3 provides you with a permanent object.
You possess the data on a tangible medium. Purchasing a digital license relies on a continuous relationship with the storefront.
A physical disc remains playable until the polycarbonate plastic degrades. A digital license vanishes the moment a distant server drops your connection or a company revokes your cryptographic token.
A Kotaku commenter named Serafinx mocked the physical media argument by comparing the $5 Saints Row 3rd disc to buying a slice of pizza and 6 wings for $7.
The comparison dismisses the permanence of physical media by equating it to consumable food. A game disc functions as a permanent license printed on polycarbonate, entirely separate from consumable resources.
Eating a pizza destroys the pizza. Playing a disc allows you to play it again tomorrow or just lend it to a friend.
Centralizing control through digital distribution is an industry-wide goal. A user named D. Darkhawk pointed out that Nintendo utilizes a similar system with their digital virtual game cards on the Switch.
If the console remains offline for an extended period, the operating system blocks access to single-player titles. The entire hardware ecosystem is standardizing around temporary revocable access masquerading as ownership.
The companies hold the verification keys, dictating when and how the hardware executes the software.
The transition from owning your entertainment to leasing it on a monthly basis is happening directly inside the system menus. If this incredibly complex, fully localized, user interface-supported digital rights management system was truly just a bug meant for an exploit patch, what underlying unannounced infrastructure is Sony quietly building into the PlayStation ecosystem for the next console generation? Watch your timers.